Breaking news. Zelensky has presented a secret plan to his generals. Will Crimea be cut off, and will Putin surrender? This autumn could be the turning point. Our forces have done it in Crimea. That very operation has begun, key routes are already under fire. And that's not all. A convoy of equipment was destroyed, Russian supplies are crumbling, but the main part is yet to come. Ukraine's double offensive, an unexpected turn in Europe, production of Ukrainian missiles in Germany, and new military plans that could reshape the balance of power. And that's not the end of it. The Group of 7 nations, the United States Senate, international negotiations, and behind-the-scenes decisions that could change the course of events this very summer. I'll tell you all about it right now. Have Ukraine and the West set a final date for the war? Stay with us and leave your comments below the video. Your opinion matters to us. Greetings, I'm Solomia Dolik. This is Ukraine Today, and we're getting started. Will Crimea be cut off from Russia? The armed forces of Ukraine have made a bold statement. The commander of the armed forces of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, Robert Brovdi, known as Madyar, stated that Ukraine plans to significantly disrupt the logistics of Russian troops to occupied Crimea. According to him, due to regular strikes on key supply routes, the traffic intensity on the so-called Novorossiya highway, which connects Russia to Crimea through occupied Ukrainian territories, has already decreased by more than 2/3.
In another month, Ukraine will gain full control over the road. In the near future, we will isolate Crimea.
Meanwhile, the Ukrainian military continues to strike the occupiers' logistics. The commander of the 1st Separate Assault Regiment, Dmytro Filatov, reported that a large convoy of Russian equipment was hit near Armyansk.
There were approximately 50 trucks with fuel and ammunition. Some of them were destroyed.
According to Filatov, such strikes are already significantly complicating the supply of Russian units in the occupied territories. Will October or November decide everything? The media has revealed Ukraine's new plan. Ukraine is preparing for a so-called double offensive, simultaneously on the military and diplomatic fronts. This is reported by Ukrainska Pravda, citing sources in the government and the defense forces. According to the publication, this summer, Ukraine plans to maximize its positions through long-range strikes and drone attacks on Russian logistics in the occupied territories. One of the key tasks is to create a logistical lockdown of Crimea.
Wait until July, and you will see what Ukrainian strength is.
At the same time, Kyiv is stepping up diplomatic pressure on Russia through international partners. According to sources in the government, October and November are increasingly being mentioned as a possible period for opening a window of opportunity for the negotiation process. Meanwhile, there are no official statements on starting negotiations yet. Europe is betting on a Ukrainian missile. They could start producing them in Germany soon. A German defense giant is considering launching production of the Ukrainian Flamingo cruise missile at its facilities. The company's CEO, Helmut Rauch, confirmed that negotiations with the Ukrainian company Firepoint will take place in the coming weeks.
We are holding discussions regarding potential cooperation. I believe that this could happen.
According to him, if the parties create a new product together, the logical step would be to organize production not only in Ukraine but also in Germany. Against this backdrop, Germany is actively seeking its own long-range solutions. Meanwhile, Ukraine's Firepoint is already producing about 200 Flamingo missiles a month and claims readiness to increase volumes. In addition, the company recently reported successful tests of a new anti-aircraft missile, the FP7.X, which is called a potential alternative to the American Patriot system. A decisive summit. European leaders are preparing a new plan regarding Russia. Will they force Putin to sit at the negotiating table as early as July? The leaders of France, Great Britain, and Germany are preparing a new diplomatic initiative to end the war in Ukraine. According to media reports, during the G7 summit, which will take place June 15th to 17th in France with the participation of presidents, they will try to secure the support of the US president to increase pressure on the Kremlin. The main goal is to achieve a ceasefire and force Russia to move to real negotiations in the coming months. Whether this plan will work and whether Vladimir Putin will agree to such terms remains an open question for now. The G7 summit itself could become one of the key diplomatic moments this summer. Millions of dollars for Ukraine. An important step has been taken in the US Senate. The U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee has approved its version of the defense budget for over $1.15 trillion. The document provides for the allocation of $750 million to American companies for the supply of weapons to the armed forces of Ukraine. In addition, the bill prohibits the use of budget funds to recognize Russian sovereignty over occupied Ukrainian territories and provides for the continuation of intelligence support for Ukraine. However, a final decision has not yet been made. Ahead are votes in the House of Representatives and the Senate, coordination of the final version of the document, and the signature of the U.S. President. If the law is approved, Ukraine could receive a new military support package in the near future. The Russian offensive has been halted. Ukrainian medium-range strikes on occupying forces have effectively disrupted the pace of Russia's offensive operations. Reuters reports this, citing assessments from military analysts. According to analysts, systematic attacks on logistics in occupied territories led to reduced supplies to the front, which practically stopped the offensive last month. Also, by their estimates, this weakened the Russian air defense system and opened opportunities for strikes on deeper targets, specifically oil infrastructure and defense production. The commander of the AFU Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Brovdi, known as Madyar, stated the goal of such actions is to inflict significant losses on Russia and undermine its ability to continue the war.
The Russian Federation must feel the pain of war, just as it is happening in Ukraine.
Ukraine, according to the military, continues its strategy of systematic pressure on the enemy's rear and logistical facilities. In parallel, the situation in southern Ukraine is escalating. The so-called land corridor to temporarily occupied Crimea has come under serious strain after new strikes on key logistical routes of the Russian forces. Damage to infrastructure, fuel supply disruptions, and complications in military transport are being reported. All this creates additional problems for supplying the occupying units in the south. At the same time, the Ukrainian military continues to systematically strike the enemy's rear logistics, increasing pressure on key transport routes. What does this mean for the situation at the front? We'll tell you more.
Ukraine continues to strike Russia and the territories it has seized. Special operations forces have taken aerial control over part of the occupiers' land route to Crimea. As reported by the SOF press service, drone operators of the 3rd Regiment are destroying enemy equipment and disrupting Russian logistical connections on the Melitopol-Chonhar route. In recent weeks, logistics for the Russian army have become more difficult on the Russian-occupied peninsula. In addition, a significant fuel shortage has emerged and stores are limiting food sales.
I've been standing here for 3 hours today. I don't know if there'll be enough because 95 and 92 have already run out.
For the second day in a row, I'm leaving at 6:30 in the morning to get 20 liters of gasoline.
The so-called Novorossiya highway, or the land corridor to the occupied peninsula, has been under drone strikes since early May. We're talking about approximately 500 kilometers of highway along the Sea of Azov. Yesterday morning, the occupation authorities of Crimea announced a ban on private and bus transport through the so-called land corridor to the peninsula. A similar ban has been introduced on the highways of the temporarily occupied Luhansk region. According to observers, in May alone, 125 attacks on legitimate enemy logistics targets were confirmed on the roads of the temporarily occupied Ukrainian territories.
A convoy. That's good. Good. A drone. Look what it did, damn.
Yesterday morning, Ukraine struck St. Petersburg for the second time. Drones attacked the 15th arsenal of the Russian Navy in the Leningrad region, the Peterhof oil depot, and the Research Institute of Marine Thermal Engineering, where underwater weapons are designed. These attacks coincided with the opening and closing days of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, the pride of Russian propaganda. Local Governor Alexander Beglov, for the first time since the start of the Russo-Ukrainian War, urged residents not to leave their homes.
On the morning of June 6th, St. Petersburg suffered a large-scale attack by military-grade unmanned aerial vehicles. Air defense systems are operating. In accordance with the recommendations of the operational headquarters, I ask St. Petersburg residents to stay in their homes and not go outside. Possible disruptions to mobile internet. We will provide further updates on the elimination of aerial threats.
Meanwhile, a series of explosions also occurred at the Ust-Labinsk oil depot in the Kuban region, followed by a massive fire.
At least 3 fuel storage tanks are engulfed in flames. This oil depot is a vital rear hub for storing and supplying fuel to Russian troops in the southern and eastern directions.
And on Friday night, Ukrainian drone operators struck 5 vessels at once in the ports of Mariupol, Berdyansk, and in the coastal waters of the occupied territories. Video of the combat operation was released by the commander of the AFU Unmanned Systems Forces, Major Robert Brovdi, call sign Madyar.
The names of dry cargo ships and tankers painted over by Black Sea marauders and radars turned off for the quiet theft of Ukrainian grain and the transport of military cargo and fuel no longer guarantee the survival of large, slow-moving military targets or the regularity of shipments. The occupiers' smuggling logistics must be stopped. Good optics, heavy 100-kilogram arguments. To be continued.
Among the attacked ships is a tanker from Russia's Shadow Fleet. Alexander Muzichuk, Podrobici Inter-TV channel United News Marathon.
Urgent. Zelensky has issued an urgent statement. Ukraine and the West have united for something shocking. The anti-ballistic system is ready, the sky is locked down. Historic agreements that change the balance of power. Hungary and Denmark are fighting for Kyiv. The US finally takes the plunge. Weapon arsenals for the AFU are finally being opened wide. We'll tell you more about this in just a moment.
While Russia again terrorizes peaceful Kyiv with drones and missiles, Ukraine is asking partners not just for symbolic support and words of concern, but for interceptor missiles for Patriot systems, as we have a shortage of them. Just yesterday, Russia launched over 600 drones and more than 70 missiles at our cities. According to some experts, the enemy could carry out such attacks almost every week. Against this backdrop, the president ordered all state financial resources to go towards strengthening air defense and announced a new deal to buy Patriots. He didn't specify who agreed to sell them, but he gave 1 week to launch the contract.
The task is absolutely clear: to speed up this contract for the Patriots. And this is the personal responsibility of the officials involved. Funds from the €90 billion European support package for Ukraine and our other financial resources must work as quickly as possible to fulfill the tasks that will ensure the protection of Ukrainian lives. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine.
For the war to finally end, Europe needs its own anti-ballistic capabilities, Zelensky adds. Ukraine, along with 13 countries and NATO, is preparing a new anti-ballistic coalition that will ensure its own production of air defense systems and missiles. After the latest massive strike, Hungary unfroze EU money for weapons for Ukraine, which Orban had previously blocked. And Denmark's Prime Minister reminded Europe of the so-called Danish model, direct funding for drone and weapon production right in Ukraine.
We support production lines directly in Ukraine, and that's at least a small part of why Ukraine is holding on, especially thanks to drones and also thanks to other capabilities today. And it's drones that have changed everything, at sea, in the sky, and on land.
But the Ukrainian sky needs to be closed now. Last week, Zelensky sent a letter to the US President and Congress because of a critical shortage of missiles and a deficit of Patriots themselves. It states that the current pace of US weapon deliveries, which Ukraine buys under the FURL program, no longer matches the real threat as Russian attacks intensify. Trump himself didn't respond to the letter, but the head of the Pentagon said the US is looking for a way to help Ukraine.
We're changing the approach to producing all these vital munitions so our companies supply not just a bit more but significantly more across the board. We want Ukraine to be able to defend itself, and we'll find a way to provide the necessary assistance.
Ukraine is ready to buy more missiles from the US, but right now it's not about the money. There's a global shortage of interceptors. Amid operations in the Middle East, stockpiles are dwindling, and actual production isn't enough to cover all the needs of Washington's allies. So Ukraine has asked the US for a license to produce missiles for Patriots. But is it realistic to get it? On one hand, it would significantly strengthen Ukrainian air defense and speed up missile production. On the other hand, the Patriot is one of the most classified US military technologies, and Americans very rarely grant full transfers of such tech. After lengthy negotiations, Poland has received permission to produce missiles for the Patriot. This could simplify logistics for our armed forces, and if agreements are reached, a portion could be supplied to Ukraine. However, this is a long-term solution and we need protection immediately as Russia attacks with everything in its arsenal. Olena Honcharenko, We Are Ukraine, Marathon, United News.
Retribution for the Russian Federation has already begun. For the Russian rear, this is a week of total strike chaos. Ukrainian drones and long-range strike weapons have carried out a series of strikes on strategic Russian targets. Among those hit were oil refineries, logistics hubs, and military infrastructure deep within the aggressor country. Fires broke out at the Saratov and Syzran oil refineries. There are also reports of strikes on Transneft facilities in the Yaroslavl region and port infrastructure. The work of the unmanned systems forces on military targets, including the enemy's airfield and technical infrastructure, is particularly noted. The consequences of these strikes are further in the video.
Saratov oil refinery. Massive drone attack and explosions. Several powerful fire sources and columns of smoke over the enterprise. According to preliminary data, drones hit the isomerization unit. The facility provided fuel to the occupying forces. Local authorities are traditionally silent, having only announced a drone threat. That same night, an oil depot in the village of Matviv Kurgan in the Rostov region was hit again. A critical logistics facility for the occupiers in the southern direction. It was scorched by a massive raid, and local residents watched the glow from the fire for miles. The defense forces also struck the occupiers' port infrastructure. The day before, a tanker, a fuel tank, and an administrative building caught fire in Taganrog, Rostov region. But the biggest blow to this city was dealt by special forces of the Unmanned Systems Forces. Pilots of the first separate center of the USF visited the local military airfield, and quite successfully. At the launch position, they incinerated an Iskander operational tactical complex, and on the runway, two Tu-142 long-range anti-submarine aircraft.
USF birds destroyed an Iskander and two Tu-142 aircraft at a military airfield in Taganrog, Russia on the night of May 30th. A courtesy visit to Taganrog was made by the birds of the first separate center of the USF.
In the Yaroslavl region, the Yaroslavl 3 hub oil pumping station of the Transneft company caught fire. This strategic enterprise of the Surgut-Polotsk oil pipeline pumps raw materials from Siberia to the Baltic. 2 giant tanks with a volume of 50 and 20,000 cubic meters burned down at the station. In addition, the defense forces officially confirmed the complete shutdown of the Syzran oil refinery in the Samara region and a large-scale fire at the Tuapse refinery. It has already been attacked for the 5th time this spring. It's okay. The effects of the shortage are already being felt in temporarily occupied Crimea. Since May 31st, a rationing system has been officially introduced on the peninsula. At gas stations of the largest networks, Atan and TES, 95-octane gasoline is now only issued with coupons, prioritizing municipal and special vehicles. 92-octane is limited to 20 liters per tank, and filling fuel into canisters is strictly prohibited. Occupation head Sergei Aksionov is asking Crimeans not to panic and promises to normalize the situation within at least a month.
Filling canisters is prohibited. The expected time frame for normalizing the current situation is within 30 days. I ask Crimeans and guests of the Republic to remain calm and trust only official sources of information. In general, the situation isn't changing. 11 o'clock and there's no gas.
In Sevastopol, gasoline has completely disappeared from most gas stations. The local governor, Mikhail Razvozhayev, blames logistical difficulties. The occupiers are afraid to transport fuel across the Kerch Bridge for safety reasons, and the ferry crossing can't cope. The only supply route is the land corridor through Mariupol and Melitopol, where Ukrainian drones hunt around the clock. According to OSINT analysts, over 120 Russian trucks have been destroyed on this road since early May. Most were carrying fuel to refuel military equipment and supply the peninsula.
At Atan and TES network gas stations, ultra-diesel fuel is currently available, but it's not at all stations. 92 and 95 octane gasoline are temporarily unavailable. Fuel supplies are expected throughout the day. We will provide further updates on the resumption of sales. We ask for your understanding regarding the situation.
While the Russian Ministry of Defense continues to report thousands of allegedly downed Ukrainian drones and advanced long-range missiles, reality dictates its own terms. Shut down oil refineries, paralyzed ports, and an acute fuel shortage within Russia itself clearly demonstrate that the aggressor is no longer able to protect its own strategic infrastructure in the rear. Danil Dayomin, Podrobitsi, Inter-TV Channel, United News Marathon.
And what do you think about these events? Write your opinion in the comments and we will definitely read it. So if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe, and stay with us because it will get even more interesting. See you in the next report.